BTS News Today, the building was quieter than usual that night, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. HYB's top floor always carried an air of secrecy, but lately it felt different, charged, heavy, buzzing with something unspoken. Staff members walked with hushed steps, lights dimmed earlier than usual, and even the city outside seemed to soften its glow, as if respecting whatever was unfolding behind those tinted studio windows. Rumors were already swirling among the few people who still remained in the building after hours, and every whisper carried the same names, the same question, the same impossible curiosity. What exactly was happening between Jimin and Jungkook behind the scenes tonight? The world knew their stage chemistry. The cameras recorded every synchronized breath, every matching step, every glance that lasted just 1 second longer than expected. But what the world didn't see, what no fan cam could capture, were the moments that lived in the shadows, the ones that lingered after the final bow, when the applause had faded and the makeup wipes brushed away the glitter of the spotlight. Those were the moments that tonight, for the first time, felt dangerously close to being revealed. Inside Studio 3B, the air was warm from hours of practice. The LED panels had been switched off, leaving only the soft ambient glow of the security lights. The mirrored wall reflected two figures sitting on the floor, exhausted yet unable to leave. Jimin sat with his knees drawn up, head slightly tilted back as he tried to regulate his breathing. Jungkook sat across from him, arms resting loosely on his thighs, still catching his breath as well. The two of them didn't speak at first, but the silence felt anything but empty. It stretched between them, heavy with unsaid thoughts, memories, and the complicated familiarity of two people who had grown up together under a pressure no one else could understand. That IT had been a long day. Longer than usual, even for them. The comeback teaser shoot had run over schedule. The choreography adjustments kept shifting until the last moment, and the director had insisted on reshooting a particular scene where Jimin and Jungkook had to hold each other's gaze for several seconds. The footage would later be edited into a beautifully stylized montage, but the raw moment had been something else entirely. Something electric, something that left both of them blinking too quickly afterward, pretending the camera lights were to blame. "Was today weird for you?" Jimin finally asked, voice soft, almost hesitant. Jungkook looked at him, expression unreadable in the dim light. "Which part?" Jimin breathed a small laugh. "All of it." Jungkook exhaled with a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sigh. He ran a hand through his hair, still damp from sweat. "Yeah, kind of." There it was, not a full admission, but something close. Jimin watched him, noticing the way Jungkook's chest rose and fell, the way his eyes shifted away when emotions threatened to spill through. These moments were rare, not the tiredness, not the silence, but the vulnerability. Jungkook had always been careful with his feelings, especially around cameras, and sometimes, even around the members. But tonight, the barrier was thinner. Tonight, he looked like someone who had been carrying too much for too long. Jimin shifted closer without even realizing it. "You were quiet during the shoot." "So were you," Jungkook countered. "Yes," Jimin admitted. "Because you were." Their eyes met again. This time, neither of them looked away. There were 1,000 things Jimin wanted to say. Things he'd swallowed down for years. Things he'd blurred behind jokes, behind teasing, behind the soft smiles he always saved for Jungkook. But the truth was that tonight felt different. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the weight of their careers. Maybe it was simply the stillness of the empty studio. Whatever it was, it nudged him closer and closer to saying something he wasn't sure he could ever take back. Before he could speak, there was a faint noise from outside, the sound of footsteps in the hall. Both of them froze instinctively, habits from years of living in a world where privacy was a luxury. Jungkook's head turned slightly toward the door, listening. Jimin stayed still, his breath caught mid-chest. But the footsteps faded away, whoever it was returning down the stairwell. The tension remained long after the echo disappeared. "HYB feels different these days," Jungkook said quietly once the silence returned. Jimin nodded. "Everyone's tense." "It's the comeback," Jungkook added, but even he didn't sound convinced. "It's not just that," Jimin murmured, and they both knew it. There had been rumors, whispers about internal conflicts, about long-term scheduling issues, about disagreements between departments over creative direction. Even the staff who usually smiled through everything seemed worn thin lately. But beneath all of that, something else had been building. Something more personal. Something centered around them. Jimin leaned his head against the mirror behind him, the surface cool against his skin. Do you ever feel like they're watching us more than before? They've always watched us, Jungkook replied, but he lowered his voice anyway. But yeah, lately, it feels different. Jimin hummed softly. The director kept telling us to stand closer, to look more intense. It felt like he wanted something from us. Jungkook paused before saying, "He knows what fans want." "Do you?" Jimin asked gently. Jungkook looked at him sharply, caught off guard by the question. "Do I what?" Jimin's voice softened. "Do you know what you want?" The question hung in the air, heavier than anything said all night. Jungkook's throat bobbed as he swallowed. He looked down at his hands. His fingers curled slightly, as if gripping an invisible truth he didn't want to speak. "I don't know," he said finally. "Sometimes I think I do. Sometimes I think I'm lying to myself." Jimin's breath hitched, but he didn't show it. "You can tell me you know." Jungkook's eyes lifted, meeting his again with an honesty that made Jimin's heart stutter. "That's the problem," Jungkook whispered. "I know." The studio suddenly felt too quiet, too intimate. The hum of the city outside seemed to press against the windows as if trying to listen. Jimin could hear his own heartbeat, loud and steady, and he could see the rise and fall of Jungkook's chest in the faint glow. Everything felt suspended. Time, sound, breath. Jungkook leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. "Do you ever feel like we're living two different versions of ourselves?" he asked. "One for the world, and one that no one sees." "All the time," Jimin said immediately. "But the one they don't see, that's the one that scares me." "Why?" "Because sometimes," Jimin whispered, "that version of me wants things I shouldn't." Jungkook's eyes opened slowly. "Like what?" Jimin's lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked down at his hands, suddenly trembling. He wasn't someone who shook easily, not even during award speeches or high-pressure performances. But tonight, it was as if every emotion he'd buried for years was suddenly pushing to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. Jungkook noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. "Hyung," he said gently, shifting a little closer. "What are you trying to say?" But before Jimin could answer, the studio door clicked. Both of them jolted, the moment snapping like a thread pulled too tight. The door opened slightly, revealing a sliver of hallway light that a head peeked in. "Ah, sorry," one of the staff members stammered. "I didn't know you were still here. The cleaning team needs to lock this floor soon." Jimin immediately smiled, his professionalism sliding back over him like a mask. "We'll be out in a bit." The staff member nodded, bowed, and left as quickly as they came. The door shut again, and the room returned to dim silence. But the moment was gone, buried beneath the interruption, swallowed by caution. Jimin stood up slowly, stretching his legs. "We should go before they lock us inside." Jungkook didn't move. He was watching Jimin with an expression that was too serious for the situation, too focused. "You didn't finish what you were saying."